What's up guys, Lifting here. This is a very quick video. It's not supposed to be instructional, it's just supposed to give you a rundown of the character that I am currently playing, because a lot of you guys are asking on the stream to get a setup of this so you can emulate it or try to build towards it. So I'm going to give you the video here and in the path of building below, and then if there's interest for it, I will turn this into a build guide with instructions and, you know, going into detail about what everything does. So it's an ArcWarper Poet's Pen Ascendant, and it relies on evasion and dodge and spell dodge as its core defensive mechanic, and then it has a decent sized health pool. One thing to note here is that I'm still leveling the character. It's still fairly early for this character. I think it's level 84 or something like that. So I'm expecting it to have more health eventually, of course. I'm maybe around 6,000. I'm also using it with a bit of magic find items right now, such as the Bisco's Leash and Ventor's Gamble. But besides that, then there's no magic find items. And I also want to emphasize that you do not have to use it with the magic find items. So let me show you the gear setup. I have a Poet's Pen in each hand, of course. And when you attack with Poet's Pen, the spell that you have in each of the Poet's Pen will get triggered. So I'm having Lightning Warp here, and I'm having Arc here. Arc deals the bulk of the damage. Arc is in a very good place right now. And Lightning Warp is of course what allows us to have some pretty efficient and fast map clear speed potential. I'm also using it with Impulse's Broken Heart. This is mostly for the enemies you kill explode, dealing 8% or whatever the roll you get of their maximum life as lightning damage. And these explosions, it helps you clear the map faster. And it's mostly because this is a non-crit character. Whereas I think most other setups that have been doing this are crits, but I'm unsure on that. But the nice thing about if you're non-crits and you still want to have that pop effect, then Impulses can give you that if you just have enough chains to shock on your skills. If you were crit, you wouldn't really need the Impulse, it would still be nice, but then the Herald of Ice would take care of that effect, right? To trigger the Poet's Pen spells, the Lightning Warp and Arc, I use Frenzy. And I use Frenzy because Frenzy, when you attack with that, you generate a Frenzy Charge, and Frenzy Charges is a part of this setup way of getting damage. And on top of that, Frenzy is also the fastest of the attack skills you can use, because if you have quality on it, 20 quality will give you 10% increased attack speed. And it's important to get a certain amount of attack speed with Poet's Pen builds, because you want to align the global cooldown of the spells that you have in your wands to be as efficient with the attack animation. I know that sounds a little complicated, but basically, to put it real simple, try to aim for, when you have your buffs up, your reliable buffs, try to aim to have around 3.78 attacks per second. Theoretically, you should be able to get 3.99, but because of latency and input lag, etc., then that just doesn't really work in practical. So go for 3.78 or something like that. For single target, I swap over to another pair of Poet Pen wands, so it does require that investment if you also want to have some decent single target. You don't need that. You can just skip the map bosses anyway, because who cares? They never drop anything that's worthwhile, right? But if you want to do that, and I kind of like doing that, then having another pair of Poet Pen wands is very nice. And for that setup, I still use Frenzy as my attack setup, right, to proc the spells. But the spells I use for my single target is also Arc, but together with Arc, it is Ball Lightning. Ball Lightning also got buffed recently, so it feels pretty good. It definitely delivers some pretty nice single target damage. And while this is a mapper, so to speak, this character, I wouldn't be surprised if this definitely can take on Shaper, for instance. Then I use Herald of Thunder, I use Herald of Ice, both to give me more damage, and the effect that they give, of course, is nice too. But since I'm not crit, it doesn't happen as often for the Herald of Ice. So it's debatable with Herald of Ice. It doesn't give that much more damage too, but it still works. One thing you could do is to remove both Herald of Thunder and remove Herald of Ice and instead use Wrath. That will give you the most damage, but you won't have the secondary effects. I am still trying to figure out what I like for that. Then I use Grace and Vol Grace in like the same, and that's very, very nice for when doing the temples, because since we're already at dodge and spell dodge build, we also get spell dodge from the Atzeri boots here. Then we reach some pretty impressive numbers, and that means those spitters were always a pain in the ass and is like the bane of many hardcore players right now. They become much less dangerous to deal with. However, when you use Grace and you use Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder, that means you have 100% of your mana reserved. You can see I have 0 down here. And to make that work, I then use Blood Magic in my attack setup, which procs my spells right. And I use Blood Magic for Decoy Totem over here. I still need to figure out what I want to have in the 2 last sockets. If you didn't use Blood Magic, you would also have, or for your main attack setup that is, you would also have to make sure you had enough mana regen to sustain the fast attacks so that you cast them efficiently all the time, you don't run out of mana and so forth. For class, I went with the Scion, and I went, obviously, Ascendant. It's the only thing she can spec into. But as the Ascendant, I went for the Elementalist, because we get some damage penetration. We don't have to fear reflected elemental damage. Further effect of the Heralds. That's one of the arguments to use Heralds over the Wrath, but it's up to you, right? And then the additional Golem. That's what we get most from this. It's pretty good. In my opinion, you get more by going Ascendant than pure Elementalist. I think the pure Elementalist has a couple of notes that's simply just not really worth it. Yeah. Then I'm using it with the Raider down here, and that is to get some movement speed. And I know that while we are warping around, then movement speed maybe means, or you would think it means a little less, but consider that movement speed also increases the warp speed. Yeah, it works like that. We also get chance to dodge with this, so of course that's great. And we have Onslaught while we are on full frenzy charges. The nice thing about that is, again, movement speed from Onslaught, but also the attack speed, of course. But it also saves us a specific flask setup if we wanted to have Onslaught via this, that is. You would also want to go Path of the Ranger. This allows us to have an efficient skill tree, in my opinion, where, ignore this up here, I'm going to respec that. Besides that, then it allows us to gain a lot of life on this side of the tree by going into like the Templar area and up to the Witch area for the lightning damage, some jewels, and so forth, right? This over here is actually pretty nice when you're not crit 2. Most other builds who do this go Mind over Matter as a form of defense. Since I wanted to reserve my mana, Mind over Matter is obviously not going to be very nice, right? So I needed to figure out another way of building defense, and then I went with the Ranger, Path of the Ranger, because it allows us to start over here, go into acrobatics and then face acrobatics, because of the reasons I was talking about earlier with spell dodge and spitters, etc. And it allows us to go over and grab frenzy charges as a form of scaling our damage, which is needed because we don't really have, we can't scale it via crit multi and all these things. One thing to note if you're running this setup is that you need to be aware of the fact that since Elementalist is the best thing to start by going for, and you need the Uberlap to eventually go into Path of the Ranger, which allows you to start down here, that means you'll run out of skill, what should we call passives, to spend your skill points on. So that meant that when I had picked up all the passives over here that I wanted for my skill tree, then I still had around 9 skill gems unused, where I was just waiting to get Path of the Ranger done so I could start spending them over here, right? That is a little annoying. But I mean, if you can get an early overlap carry or just spec into a lot of the nodes that benefited me at the time, but then spent my refund points on those, that wasn't necessarily planned for the final skill tree. And then I respec those later once I got Path of the Ranger, and then I spent them over here. That works too, but it is a little annoying. That's one thing to know. To level the build, I just went with the Poet's Pen. I used Arc from the get-go. You can use Freezing Pulse in the other, that works great. Or you can just use Lightning Warp from the get-go, but I don't suggest it from the beginning, at least not until level 31, when you can use your Swift Affliction and reduced or less duration support, because otherwise the Lightning Warp is just too slow, it doesn't feel good. But Lightning or Arc and Freezing Pulse should feel great from the get-go. And you can use the Poet's Pen from level 12, so it makes for some really nice and fast leveling. And that's the build I'm playing right now. As I said, if there is an interest for it, I will turn this into a full build guide where I explain the things a little better, and you guys will have most of the questions answered that you are probably left with right now, especially if you're a beginner to the game. But feel free to ask below in the comments too, and I'll try and keep an eye on the questions and answer those. Otherwise, you can come check it out and ask on the stream. I'll be playing this for until I die, I guess, on this character. I'm playing in hardcore with this. And yes, you can do that. You can do that. It makes for some interesting encounters sometimes, but yeah. Anyway, that's the build. That's the video I wanted to give to you guys who are interested in the build. Thank you for watching. And bros, do you even nerd?